What if everything the Confederacy believed about defending Vicksburg was completely false? Deception so profound, they prevented them from seeing the relentless force approaching their stronghold, General Grant's iron resolve and bold tactics. In this video, we will reveal the 5 fatal misconceptions the Confederacy held at Vicksburg and how Grant demolished each one immediately, changing the course of the Civil War permanently. But before we begin, please like and subscribe to our channel to support our community and ensure you never miss the most riveting moments in history's greatest battles. Are you ready to uncover the truths they fought so hard to conceal? Let's begin. The Union's effort to capture Vicksburg met with many difficulties. The first attack was launched in May 1862 with a naval offensive that failed to suppress Confederate artillery defenses. Subsequent campaigns over the summer also failed to secure a strategic edge, leading to General Ulysses S. Grant's appointment as commander as winter approached. At that time, engineers undertook an ambitious effort to redirect the river by digging a canal beside the city, hoping to bypass Vicksburg's formidable fortifications. Military planners of the day believed this river diversion would lessen the city's military significance by altering the Mississippi's course. Nevertheless, the endeavor was abandoned early on due to widespread tropical diseases such as malaria and dysentery, combined with oppressive heat during the summer that incapacitated many workers. When January arrived, Grant restarted the canal project under President Lincoln's close supervision, with daily reports delivered to the White House. Though Grant privately questioned the canal's likelihood of success, he appreciated its role in maintaining troop discipline and physical readiness for upcoming spring operations. Between January and March 1863, 5 additional military efforts, including a naval campaign along the Yazoo River, failed to breach Vicksburg's defense lines. Grant later called these setbacks reconnaissance missions that confirmed the city's near-impenetrable fortifications. As canal excavation continued through March, unexpected rises in the river breached the barriers, flooding the unfinished channel. In response, Union engineers deployed steam-powered dredges to clear and maintain the canal. However, Confederate artillery observers atop the bluffs quickly spotted these dredges and targeted them with highly accurate bombardments. This crucial failure forced the complete abandonment of the hydraulic diversion attempt to circumvent Vicksburg's defenses. Facing rapidly narrowing alternatives, General Grant conceived a bold and radical shift in strategy, ordering a full land assault from the city's eastern approaches. To carry out this eastern flanking maneuver, Grant's forces had to penetrate behind Confederate defensive lines. His troops marched south along the western riverbank, crossing and moving inland. This daring operation relied heavily on naval support to enable the essential river crossing. Rear Admiral David D. Porter's squadron was vital. On the night of April 16th, while under relentless fire from Confederate batteries, Porter expertly guided his armored fleet past Vicksburg's heavily defended positions in a daring nighttime passage. The initial amphibious assault to secure Grand Gulf failed, forcing the Union forces to move further downstream to Bruinsburg. The successful river crossing at Bruinsburg on April 30th marked the start of Grant's advance into Confederate-held Mississippi. Although future progress depended on securing reliable supply lines, the troops initially survived mostly on the provisions they carried. Historical accounts emphasize Grant's unyielding determination during this critical and uncertain time. This firm resolve was based on his earlier campaign experience. In previous land engagements against Vicksburg, disrupted supplies had compelled his troops to forage for crops and other agricultural resources successfully. Drawing from this, Grant formulated the idea that his troops could, if necessary, temporarily sustain themselves by requisitioning local supplies. Contrary to popular belief, a total abandonment of supply lines never truly occurred. Grant's post-war memoirs, which reference a logistical separation on May 3rd, have caused some confusion among historians regarding this matter. Documentary evidence shows that only a brief 72-hour lapse in supplies happened between the Bruinsburg River crossing and the capture of Grand Gulf on May 3rd. Once Grand Gulf was secured, Grant implemented an innovative resupply method. Wagons loaded with ammunition and hardtack were sent along a little-known riverside path running through the floodplain. Critics like General Sherman warned that this inadequate route could never support an army of 50,000 men, urging a halt in operations to consolidate supplies. Grant's recorded reaction clarified his dual provisioning method. Although relying entirely on Grand Gulf for rations was improbable, he intended to combine carried supplies with locally procured provisions to maintain his forces. Breadstuffs and coffee were expected to sustain soldiers' combat readiness until complete logistical support was restored. This calculated risk ultimately demonstrated Grant's operational flexibility and proved decisive in determining the campaign's success. While Vicksburg remained the campaign's main goal, Grant retained a disciplined and systematic approach to operational planning. His initial target in Mississippi shifted to Port Gibson because of its strategic control over key transportation routes linking Grand Gulf to Jackson. Controlling this critical junction would grant Union forces command over the Southern Railroad, Vicksburg's essential supply line. After the Grand Gulf setback, Confederate Major General John S. Bowen correctly deduced Grant's plan to cross the Mississippi and predicted Port Gibson would become the Union's focal point. In response, Grant used strategic deception by sending Colonel Benjamin Grierson on a mounted raid deep into Confederate territory designed to divert enemy forces from his true objectives. Meanwhile, urgent appeals for reinforcements reached Lieutenant General John C. Pemberton, who, following standing orders, prioritized Vicksburg's defense over dispatching reserves elsewhere. After crossing the river, Union forces split to encircle the two main access routes to Port Gibson, forcing Confederate defenders, outnumbered, to stretch their lines thin. Fighting began before dawn on May 1st, when Union patrols encountered concealed Confederate units near dense thickets around Magnolia Church. Pemberton's hesitation in authorizing reinforcements proved disastrous. Despite determined resistance, the overstretched Confederate troops suffered heavy losses and were ultimately forced to retreat. Bowen's post-battle report expressed regret, noting that while his men fought bravely, the overwhelming numerical disadvantage was impossible to overcome. The withdrawal resulted in the capture of hundreds of Confederate soldiers and the evacuation of Fort Coburn, ceding control of the area surrounding Grand Gulf to Union forces. The fall of Port Gibson broke Vicksburg's defensive perimeter, turning Grant's earlier defeat at Grand Gulf into a strategic gain by securing two vital territorial objectives. This significant victory opened an uncontested path toward Vicksburg, confirming the effectiveness of Grant's phased campaign plan. Grant recognized that to capture Vicksburg, Confederate reinforcement capabilities had to be neutralized first. Following the success at Port Gibson, he deliberately avoided a direct attack on Vicksburg, instead focusing on disrupting the logistical networks supporting the fortress. His eastern flanking maneuver relied on severing Confederate supply lines before launching the final assault. At the heart of this effort was Mississippi's Southern Railroad. Intelligence revealed that General Joseph E. Johnston had arrived in Jackson with reinforcements aimed at strengthening Vicksburg's defenders, emphasizing the urgency of Grant's interdiction campaign. Grant quickly identified Johnston's force as the primary threat requiring neutralization. Luck favored the Union when Johnston, mistakenly believing Vicksburg to be indefensible, withdrew his troops to Canton, leaving Jackson lightly guarded. On May 14th, Grant's forces occupied the Mississippi state capital, systematically dismantling military infrastructure to deny resources to the Confederates. Union intelligence later intercepted Johnston's orders directing Pemberton to move toward Clinton. Aware of Johnston's real position, Grant accelerated his movements to prevent the Confederate armies from uniting. Historians suggest Johnston's plan involved sacrificing Vicksburg to draw Union forces into favorable terrain for a concentrated counterattack. Meanwhile, Pemberton remained focused on defending Vicksburg, expecting reinforcements before the Union could fully encircle the city. Ultimately, both Confederate commanders miscalculated. Johnston's baiting strategy failed, and Pemberton's reinforcements never arrived, leaving Vicksburg isolated. After surviving a 47-day siege, Confederate defenders concluded their situation was hopeless. With no hope for relief and hunger closing in, the garrison commanders hesitantly agreed to begin surrender negotiations. Though their situation was desperate, they initially refused Grant's demand for unconditional surrender. The Union general then revised his terms, offering parole to Vicksburg's determined defenders. This concession was motivated by practical reasons. Due to logistical constraints, Grant could not manage holding so many prisoners, while parole allowed Confederate soldiers to return home under oath, promising not to bear arms again until Union control of Vicksburg was secure. Facing inevitable defeat, Confederate leaders accepted these modified conditions on July 4, 1863. This historic surrender gave the Union complete control over the Mississippi River, effectively dividing the Confederacy geographically. This strategic victory accelerated the Confederacy's downfall, eventually leading to the Union's triumph 2 years later and the end of the Civil War. However, the fall of Vicksburg was more than a mere military win. It symbolized the moment when the Confederacy's carefully maintained illusions shattered under Grant's unyielding reality. But here's the question. If those falsehoods had been confronted sooner, could the Confederacy have altered its destiny? Or was Vicksburg doomed to fall regardless? What do you believe was the single most decisive error that sealed their fate? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's uncover history together. And if this in-depth exploration enlightened you, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that challenge everything you thought you knew about the past. Until next time, keep questioning and keep exploring.